Have you ever stood at the edge of the world, where the land gives way to the sea, and felt the cool, misty spray on your face? If you've ever tasted that spray, even by accident, you know the ocean's oldest secret. It's salty. It's a fact so simple, we learn it as children. But the question behind it is one of the most profound you could ever ask. It's a question that takes us back to the violent birth of our planet. A question that has inspired myths of giants and magical mills. And a question that, once answered, reveals the very heartbeat of Earth itself. This isn't just a story about chemistry. This is the story of how our world became the world we know. It's the origin story of the ocean's eternal flavor. To find our answer, we have to travel back in time, way back, before life, before the continents took their familiar shape, to an Earth you wouldn't recognize. 4.5 billion years ago, our planet was a sphere of fire and rock. For hundreds of millions of years, it was pummeled by asteroids and comets, remnants from the formation of our solar system. And these cosmic travelers were delivering a very special gift: water. Locked away as ice, these celestial bodies were the seeds of our future oceans. At the same time, the planet itself was breathing. Volcanoes choked the sky with gases from deep within the Earth's mantle. Among them, vast quantities of water vapor. Eventually, the planet cooled enough for that vapor to condense, and it began to rain. Not for a day or a week. It rained for thousands, perhaps millions of years. A global deluge of unimaginable scale that slowly, patiently filled the great basins of our world. The first oceans were born. But here's the crucial part. This primordial water, this cosmic teardrop, was fresh, or at least not salty in the way we think of it. It was likely more acidic. A weak solution of carbonic acid, formed as the rain fell through an atmosphere thick with carbon dioxide. So, we have our oceans, a planet swathed in fresh water. But the main ingredient in our recipe is still missing. Where did the salt come from? The answer, it turns out, was on the land that the rain was just beginning to touch. The story of the sea's salt is really a story of a great slow-motion heist. And the thief is the most patient one of all: water. Remember how the early atmosphere was rich in carbon dioxide? When water, H2O, mixes with carbon dioxide, CO2, it forms a very mild acid called carbonic acid, H2CO3. It's the same stuff that gives fizzy drinks their slight tang. This slightly acidic rainwater is a masterful solvent. For billions of years, every time it has rained, this water has ever so gently dissolved the rocks it touches. Rocks are treasure chests of minerals. And as the carbonic acid washes over them, it breaks down these minerals and releases their components as electrically charged particles called ions. While many types of ions are released, two of the most plentiful are sodium and chloride. Sound familiar? Sodium chloride, table salt. These ions are then carried by streams and rivers, a relentless planet-wide conveyor belt, delivering this mineral treasure from the land to its final destination, the sea. Think of it this way. For billions of years, every river on Earth has been slowly, grain by grain, sprinkling salt into the ocean. It's a process so slow you could never see it, but over geological time, the cumulative effect is staggering.
But that's only half the story. There's another, far more dramatic source of salt, hidden in the one place humans couldn't see until very recently: the deep ocean floor. In 1977, scientists exploring the Galapagos Rift made a discovery that changed our understanding of life and geology on Earth. They found hydrothermal vents, sometimes called black smokers. These are essentially underwater geysers. Seawater seeps into cracks in the Earth's crust, where it's heated to extreme temperatures, over 400 degrees Celsius, by magma. As this superheated water churns through the volcanic rock, it triggers a frenzy of chemical reactions, dissolving a massive amount of minerals. It then erupts back into the ocean as a dark plume, a mineral-rich cocktail that includes the compounds that contribute to the ocean's saltiness. So, our sea gets its salt from two main sources: the slow, steady wash from the land, and these powerful primal blasts from the Earth's own fiery heart.
This brings up a logical question. If rivers and vents are constantly dumping salt into the ocean, why doesn't it just get saltier and saltier until it's as lifeless as the Dead Sea? The answer is that the ocean is in a remarkable state of equilibrium. It's a dynamic balancing act. Salt doesn't just go in, it also comes out. Think of the ocean as a bathtub with the tap always on. To stop it from overflowing, you need a drain. The ocean has several drains for salt. Some salt ions are blasted out of the water in sea spray, which is carried by wind and deposited back on land. Other ions are gobbled up by living organisms, used to build shells and skeletons, which eventually sink to the seafloor. But the biggest drains are geological. Salt ions can bind with particles of clay and other minerals, sinking to the bottom and becoming locked into sediments, eventually forming new rock. At tectonic boundaries, vast plates of the ocean floor are forced beneath continents, carrying their salty, waterlogged sediments back down into the Earth's mantle, effectively recycling them over millions of years. For at least the last 1.5 billion years, the amount of salt going in has been roughly equal to the amount of salt coming out. The ocean's salinity has remained remarkably stable, the perfect life-sustaining balance. Speaking of balance, did you know that if you could somehow remove all the salt from the oceans and spread it evenly over the Earth's land surfaces, it would form a layer more than 150 meters or 500 feet thick? That's about the height of a 40-story office building. And while the average ocean salinity is about 3.5%, it's not the same everywhere. The saltiest open ocean is the Red Sea, thanks to high evaporation and low freshwater input. The least salty is the Baltic Sea, which receives runoff from countless rivers. It's so fresh in some parts, you could almost drink it.
Today, we have geology and chemistry to explain the salt. But for nearly all of human history, the salty sea was a profound mystery. And where there is mystery, humanity creates stories. In the far north, the Vikings told of a magical mill named Grotti. It was owned by a great king and operated by two giantesses, Fenja and Menja. This mill could grind out anything the owner wished for: gold, peace, happiness. But after the king was killed, a sea king captured the giantesses and their mill, put them on his ship, and ordered them to grind salt. They ground and ground, producing mountains of salt until its sheer weight sank the ship. Down at the bottom of the sea, the story goes, the mill of Grotti grinds on to this day, forever churning salt into the water. In the Philippines, an ancient tale speaks of a giant named Ang-ngalo, the first man, who was so tall he could stride from one island to another. One day, he was carrying massive baskets of salt across the ocean to the people on the other side. But in the middle of the sea, he stumbled on the deep ocean floor. His baskets broke open, and all the salt spilled into the water, giving the sea its flavor forevermore. These stories gave meaning and magic to the natural world, but some ancient minds tried to find a more earthly explanation. The ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle, a keen observer of the world, noticed that when water evaporates, it leaves any impurities behind. He reasoned, incorrectly, that the sun's intense heat was essentially baking the earth. This process, he thought, left behind a salty, ashy residue, which was then washed into the sea by rivers. He wasn't right about the details, but he was onto something crucial: the idea that the salt came from the land. It was one of the first known attempts to replace gods and giants with observation and reason. It was the beginning of the long journey of scientific discovery that led us to the answer we know today. Whether it was a gift from a grinding mill or a geological process, one thing is certain: sea salt didn't just shape our planet's chemistry, it shaped us. For most of human history, salt was not just a seasoning for food, it was life itself. In a world without refrigeration, salt was the key to preserving food. It allowed fish to be dried, meat to be cured, and food to be stored for long journeys or harsh winters. It allowed societies to grow, to store surpluses, and to feed armies. Salt was a strategic resource as vital as water or grain. Humans learned to harvest this ocean treasure through solar evaporation, a technique used for thousands of years and still practiced today. They would trap shallow pools of seawater and let the sun do the work, leaving behind pure white crystals. Control of salt meant wealth and power. Great cities were built near salt sources. Trade routes were forged across treacherous deserts and mountains to move it. The first highway of the Roman Empire was the Via Salaria, the Salt Road, built to transport salt from the coast to the growing city of Rome. In fact, the very word salary comes from the Latin salarium. It was the money given to Roman soldiers to buy salt. Just think about that. The word we use for our wages has its roots in this humble crystal from the sea. From being a sacred offering in religious rituals to a trigger for wars and revolutions, this simple compound of sodium and chloride delivered by rivers to the sea is deeply embedded in the story of human civilization. So, where does the sea get salty? The answer is as vast as the ocean itself. It gets salty from every mountain that has ever been worn down by rain, from every river that has ever journeyed to the coast, and from the fiery heart of the planet venting its mineral secrets into the deep. It's a recipe written over 4 billion years. A process of cosmic delivery, geological theft, and a delicate planetary balancing act. The saltiness of the sea is the memory of the land. It's the signature of all the rock and earth that has ever been. It's a story that connects the mountains to the deepest trenches, the rain clouds to the core of the earth, and the ancient past to our present moment. The next time you stand by the ocean, close your eyes, feel the spray, take a deep breath. You're not just at the water's edge, you're connecting with the epic, enduring, and endlessly fascinating story of our living world. You're tasting the history of the earth.
The ocean holds countless stories. What's your favorite myth or memory related to the sea? We'd love to read about it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey into our planet's past, please consider giving this video a thumbs up and subscribing to Origin Stories. We have many more stories to tell. Thanks for watching.